So today I'm going to be sharing about our experience from co-researching with persons with disabilities in Indonesia. My name is Lily and I am from ASD Indonesia and the Philippines. So just to give you a short context about our research, in the research, there are 3 organizations involved. My organization, Arbiter Samari Terbun, which is a German-based NGO working in disaster risk reduction and also inclusive humanitarian response. And we work in partnership with Pokja of the Central Sulawesi, which is a federation of local organization of people with disabilities in Central Sulawesi, Indonesia. And for our university partner, we are partnering with the Center for Health Policy and Management, which is kind of like a think tank in the Faculty of Medicine in Gadjah Mada University, Indonesia. So our collaboration is to research the barriers to inclusive water supply and hygiene in humanitarian programming, especially after the earthquake, tsunami, and also liquefaction that struck the area in September 2018. And we cover 32 villages in 3 districts in Central Sulawesi over the period of 18 months between 2020 to 2021. So you can imagine it was being conducted in the height of COVID-19 pandemic. So let me share you about the journey that we took to ensure a more ethical research. Basically, we employ 2 main mechanisms to ensure ethics. The first one is we applied for the ethical clearance from the Institutional Review Board from the Medical University of Gadjah Mada. And in addition to that, we also developed our own ethics plan, which covered a number of things. But before giving you the details on that, maybe I can just share you the reason why we have these 2 mechanisms. So the first one is, of course, we thought that to make sure that our research becoming more legit, more meeting all the ethical guidance, we thought that it's very important for us to apply for the ethical clearance from a university, and that's why we partner with the university partner to process the application. So we go through the same usual process that I'm sure you're familiar with in terms of applying for the ethical clearance, such as making sure that the research design is there and everything. But during the process, we realized that actually the questions are more geared toward the medical research questions instead of social research questions like us. So we decided to actually make another backup plan, which is our own ethical plan that we develop on our own. And it covers a number of things, such as first, we make the plan to engage with the target informants instead of just, doing the visit for the interview. But we also said that, okay, we want to do community engagement. We want to make sure that our informants are comfortable, they know, and they give informed consent to be our informants in the research. And for us, it's very important to make a step-by-step process. And it involves several visits and engagement with the informant with disabilities so that we can really explain about the consent form, and we make it in various accessible formats. And then we conduct the interview itself. And then after that, we also conduct the follow-up meetings, such as to make sure that they're happy with the information that they're provided, or maybe they change their mind or something, or if they have follow-up questions and other things like that. So this is something that we agreed to do as part of our ethics plan. And in addition to that, we also of course, use the accessible consent form, which is very important to make sure that it can be accessible to our informants with various kinds of disabilities. And also, the ethics plan also covered the issues surrounding the procedures about how we're going to manage our data. So from that process, we've learned that ethics actually doesn't translate well in Indonesia. And the reason we realized that is because as the time goes by, we feel that each partner have different ideas about what ethics is all about. I think for our university partner, their definition of having an ethical research is when it's actually approved and getting the ethical clearance by the IRB. Whereas for us, humanitarian organization, for us, ethics is kind of like another jargon of, we have our own set of jargon such as do no harm, accountability to affected population, and so on. So we feel like it's basically the same thing, but just, sounded more academic maybe. But for our partners who are from the Organization of People with Disabilities, our co-researchers, for them, I think from our discussion, it turns out that they confused ethics with etiquette, because again, there's no very good translation about ethics to Indonesian words. It becomes etika, which is basically etiquette. It's about manners, it's about politeness. So you know how ethics is becoming something that we interpret differently among the partners. So we then decided that let's just call it responsible research instead of having that fancy language of ethics. And another thing that we learned is that the ethical clearance that we proposed to the IRB did not work, because after we get the clearance, we did not come back to it again to make sure that, of course, we still apply the principles of confidentiality and also the principle of informed consent and so on. But there's no mechanism for us to actually go back to the ethics plan or the ethical clearance to ensure that we're still on track. It's still relevant, and also, we don't have ways to identify new ethical risk or consideration. So this is something that we recognize along the way. And another problem is that we realized that our ethics plan was not really inclusive to our co-researchers with disabilities, because it was mainly being developed by ASB and also ELRA, our back donor. So I forgot to mention that ELRA is very committed to ensure that the social innovations and also researchers that they fund is really ethical, and that's good. But then I think we only focus so much about making sure that our back donor is happy that we have the ethical plan, and then we forgot to actually include the very important stakeholder, which is our partners in the discussion. And I think it was not something that we do on purpose, of course, but it's because of there's this assumption from us that we didn't realize that we have, that maybe research is something that's very new to our colleagues with disabilities. And, if we invite them to have the discussion with us, maybe they won't be able to contribute so much. So, we have this, of course, very paternalistic point of view that now talking about it, I feel ashamed that we have such a few. But yeah, that's just the reality, the mistakes that now we learn not to do. But yeah, we didn't realize that it was very paternalistic actually at the time. And it was basically because of practical considerations that, we only have 18 months to do data collection and so on and so on. So we really want to be practical and to move ahead. And then sometimes, along the way, things becoming not so participatory, including in the way we develop our ethics plan. And another thing that we realized is that we really put the emphasis on the ethics and well-being of the people with disabilities who are being our informants, and not so much about our co-researchers with disabilities. And I can give you the example. When I told you about the community engagement that we did, the 3 visits, at least 3 visits to the informants before the interview itself and the follow-up meetings, it was actually conducted by our co-researchers with disabilities during the pandemic. And of course, this gives them increased risk, health risk, especially some of them also have underlying medical problems. And in hindsight, we really very ethical for our co-researchers also. But then, yeah, this is something that another mistake that we did basically. And most importantly, our lessons is that our ethics plan was silent on the most important ethical risk, which is the imbalance of power between ASD as an international NGO with the access to the donors fund and the Pokja Obdis as our OPD partner. So yeah, a lot of things that could have been made better, but we reflect from those lessons, and I think this is something that I could share with you as our key reflections. That first, unfortunately, we as an INGO still have that colonial mindset that we realize that people with disabilities can easily be the target of the research, but they're not co-researchers. It's just difficult to switch their position from being the target of the research, becoming actual active co-researchers, just like us. So that's, I guess, the very simple reason why our focus in the ethical plan that we developed was so much on the well-being of the informants with disabilities, and not so much on the well-being of our co-researchers with disabilities. And another thing that we realized that shifting the power is an important feature of ethical research, of course, and we need to do that by making sure that the views of our local partners define our research agenda, starting from the development of the ethical plan itself, the research design, the development of research instrument, and so on. And it's not easy to shift the power because it requires a long-term process. It requires trust from both sides. And I think it's very important to plan this in your research, because then our research is 18 months, and we're lucky because we already have about 2 years of experience working with Pokja of the Central Sulawesi. So there's already existing relationship going on with them. But still, it's not enough, I think, to really make sure that we're we're having an equal partnership, because then I'm sure you're also familiar how in many situations, organizations of people with disabilities do not have the opportunity to participate in many different aspects of their life, in employment, education, and so on, including in research. And that's why I think it's so easy for them to be so appreciative about being given the opportunity to participate. And that's why it becomes, I don't want to say that their standards becoming a bit low, but they don't expect a lot from a relationship. So when you come and you have that paternalistic behavior, it's unlikely that even though you already have years and years of relationship with them, without trust, it's very difficult for them to be able to give you the input that, we're not having an equal relationship here, because I think they're just so grateful that they have the opportunity to participate. So, they're not as critical towards the relationship. And finally, I think the commitment to shift the power has to be made explicit. I just realized, for instance, when we just recently got the opportunity to co-write a book chapter together, and in the process of writing, there are a lot of guiding questions being given from us to us from the editor, and the questions also cover questions related to our relationship, how did we deal with ethical dilemmas, how did we deal with messy power relation, and things just started to come up during that discussion, which took place this year. So it was like a year after the research has been concluded, that we found out that our co-researchers actually have a lot of input after they feel safe, after we really make it clear to them that we're really looking for establishing an equal partnership with you, and that means you can basically give us any kinds of feedbacks or complaints. And in that smaller discussion, in that more intimate group, they started to share about their feedback, their complaints, and their input. And then we realized that maybe we weren't explicit enough about having our intentions to shift the power, to share the power with them. So yeah, that's just another important lesson that we have. And yeah, I think it's very important to have discussions like this, so that we can have continuous critical reflection on the way our assumptions, the way our behaviors and actions are actually being influenced so much by the colonial perspectives. It's very easy to disregard that, because it's like the air that we breathe. We don't realize that we're living in that system, and sometimes maybe subconsciously we're perpetuating the system again and again. So yeah, I think those are the lessons, important lessons, hard lessons we gathered along the way that I'm sharing with you. So